Well, let me set the scene for you. This is the end of my week in Skye and Loch, after having a week up in Sutherland as well. Sutherland and Caithness. And the weather has been a bit iffy, really. Innumerable storms, these cycles of storm and maybe a few bright hours in the morning, and then heavy snow showers rattling in off the Atlantic, and then the second week it's been severe gales bordering on storm force winds. It was 85-90 miles an hour, the storm that was sweeping in on earlier this week. And good weather's been hard to find. Blue sky's been hard to find, apart from one sunny day this week, which apparently was the first blue sky sunny day in the west of the spring, but it was short-lived, and another storm rolled in the next day, and another one the day after that, which was yesterday. And today, finally, after suffering endless low pressure systems, it seems things are taking a turn for the better. High pressure is building from Scandinavia. East winds are starting to set up, which means that back home in Fife it's going to be languishing in drizzle, perhaps some snow, fog, murk. Whereas on the west coast, in those setups, the weather tends to be like this. And this little corner of western Scotland, northwest Scotland in particular, just soaks itself in sunshine instead of rain. You can see the road, the A87, this road here, which comes out at Dorney just down there and heads on to Kyle of Lacalch and over onto Skye, part down there, and it's a merciless, unrelenting haul up to the top, up to the pass, the Bealach that I'm using to access this ridge up here. And as you can see, there's been a light dusting of snow, which has been deposited as the last weather system full of rain passed over last night. The sun, mid-March, it's very warm now, so this won't last long, I suspect. But the north-facing sides, all this snow here is facing north. There's plenty of snow up top, so it's still very much winter alpine conditions on the tops of the hills, and certainly in any north-facing ridges and corries. So it's ice axe and crampons today, I suspect, especially as the temperature has plummeted overnight and all the snow will be frozen up again. Glen Shiel is something of a mecca for hill walking, and especially for Munro bagging, with, I'm not sure, is it 20 Munros stretched out along its north side and its south side. And certainly on the south side, where there are 7 of them along there, it's a very doable, enjoyable, high-level hill walk, which barely drops below 800 metres for something like 15 kilometres. It's a mammoth undertaking, but an amazing high-level walk. That's the south side, that's the south ridge. This here is the north ridge, and it's longer than the south, and generally people tend to split it up into 2. Over that side, over by Cluani, by the inn, you have a few scattered hills, but there's a bit of a drop before these ones start, and these ones lead up to famous Five Sisters of Kintail, and that is what I am doing today. Just taking it very slowly. Got all day, don't want to rush, the weather's amazing, but it's actually quite dangerous at the moment. It's not so bad going up the hill, but because there's been so much rain, there was some parts of the Highlands have had 200 millimetres of rain this week, if not more actually. That was just in one 48-hour period. But the ground is absolutely sodden, and though it looks nice and stable, it's fine for going up, but going down, there's all the sort of the mossy grass comes free underneath your boot very easily, and you can barely take a step going down the hill without slipping. So I'm glad I'm not coming down this slope. By the time I get to the end, there's actually a better path, a stony rocky path coming off the end of the end, so that'd be better route down. But it doesn't seem to be getting, this pass doesn't seem to be getting any closer. I know it must be. Oh, it's taking its sweet time. This is undoubtedly the worst part of the whole walk. Once you're up there, it's just a bit of a undulation really. There's some steep bits, but nothing like this. This is horrendous. Oh dear. Dicey. It's not thick, covering of snow, so it's all giving way on these slabs. I lost a path ages ago under the snow, so I've just been picking my way up the bare hillside, and I'm sure with clever editing it probably looks like I've romped up here, but I assure you I have not. It's very slow going, but I must be almost there. The gradient is easing slightly, and I'm now feeling like I'm almost level with our first notch on the ridge approaching from the west. That's the first peak of the day. Oh, and here we are. And oh my goodness gracious me, what a view is opening up. Wow. That is unreal. What about this? Wow. Well, I've hit the ridge higher than I wanted. The pass is actually down there. But that's no bad thing because I'm getting the higher view to the next hills along. East is that way, which goes to the affectionately named Brothers of Kintail. It's not as widely used a term as the sisters, the Five Sisters over here, but purely really because these ones are more prominent. When you see them from the hill road that goes to Glen Shiel, where you can get the ferry to Skye, they do present themselves as 5 bumps on the horizon. That one being the highest of the whole ridge, Sgurr, was it Sgurr, which falls in very, very graceful line all the way down into the bottom of Glen Shiel, almost to sea level, for pretty much almost 1,000 metres. It's an amazing slog. You could do up that ridge if you wanted, if you so felt like it. But not today. Just gonna. That's the hard bit over. This should be. Don't want to jinx it by saying it's going to be easy, because I suspect with the snow being quite hard there might be crampons on, crampons off for a lot of the time, so we'll see. I suppose the thing I haven't mentioned yet is this. There's no wind. There's no wind at all. Yesterday, looking at the mountain weather forecast, there's a holy grail you look for, because they say they forecast the wind, what effect it's going to have on you, and how much cloud cover there's going to be, and it says chance. In a percentage, it has a chance of cloud-free Monroes, and it has a percentage. Often it's 10% or 0. But yesterday it said, looking at it last night, it said, effect of the wind on you, negligible. Oh, always waiting to read those words on that forecast. And cloud on the hills, almost none. And here we are with almost no cloud, negligible wind. It's just, I mean, it's alpine. It's alpine. It's like being in the higher ranges. So it's lining up to be quite a special day. Well, I've only come 20 metres down here, but already hitting this stuff here, it's very hard and slippy, so I think it's going to be crampons all the way if I can stick to the ridge line. It might not have to take them off much at all. So it's time on with the crampons. This glen down here, Glen Lith, I think it is. That was the way I was going to come up actually. I was going to think of parking right at the other end of the ridge at Morvik and walking in, which is about, to get up to here, I mean it's steep having to come up to the pass, but it would have been sort of 8-9 kilometres. And it would have been a beautiful walk, albeit in shadow down there by the looks of it. But it's just too far for my feet. I just wanted to be able to come up from the road and do it one way. It's a long way. By the time you get to the other end, it's a hell of a long way to walk back. And you really need 2 cars really, but thankfully I've arranged a lift. So when I get down to the other end of the ridge, I'm going to get picked up at the Kintail Lodge Hotel, is it? And then brought back up here to pick up my car. Because it's quite a difficult walk to do otherwise. There's buses that come up. You can get buses that drop you. Apparently, I've heard that you can ask them and they might drop you at, if they can stop, they'll drop you at laybys, but I don't know whether that's the case or not. There was one that was going to leave down sort of Morvik way by about 9 o'clock, which would have got us up here by about 9:30, which is a bit later than I wanted to start out. But in summer, that would be quite doable, using a bus to get up here and then walking back, or doing it the other way around and getting the bus back. This is actually the first of 6 hills, because this peak here isn't one of the 5 sisters. It's a subsidiary top of Sgurr Duya, which is the first big hill along the ridge. Well, it's not even 10 o'clock. And already it's really getting quite warm in the sun, although there's quite a bit of fair weather cloud building up, which is fine, gives it a bit of atmosphere. What I'm not sure about is this long line of cloud. That's essentially a big weather front, the one that's left the snow here last night, and it's heading east, and it's going to grind to a halt over East Scotland, and then apparently it's going to come back. So I'm hoping it's not going to come back much further than this. It's not going to rain here, but it'd be a shame to lose these glorious blue skies. Wow. This is out of this world. Oh, you live for days like this. Show you about the cloud. That's incredible. There's so much snow because it all comes from the southwest. Most of the weather comes from that direction. Wind blows it this way and deposits the snow on the leeward side of hills, which is why it's relatively bare down there. But down here, in these north-facing corries, so much snow, and you can see how it's accumulated to such depths. It's actually very deep and fracturing. There's cornices and sort of almost like crevasses in a way start forming. It's amazing. Well, that's funny, isn't it? These tracks down here, they look like fox tracks actually. It's odd to think of foxes up here, but I have seen them at quite high altitudes. It's got a, that's certainly got a head of height. It's trotting right along the edge of the cornice like this. Looks very steep because of the foreshortening over there, but sure it's not as bad as it looks. The cloud is building, comes and it goes. It's not quite the stunning blue sky alpine day that it promised, but it may clear later. beautiful ridge, a lovely cornice snaking up like that. Again, it looks steeper than it is because of foreshortening. I'm sure it looks very steep from the camera's point of view. Well, I say that, it shouldn't be too bad. About to find out. Okay, so it was fairly steep. I take it back. Oh dear. It's actually very handy that there is this build-up of deeper snow along the actual ridge line, because it's been consolidated and it's actually really good for crampons. Otherwise, I'd be slipping and sliding on the snow that's on the grass. So it's actually nice to have this solid line. But even though it's fairly well compacted, and because of all the rain and because it's all been refreezing again, it's all fairly stable. But I still wouldn't want to get too close to the edge. It's quite murky. The summit was obscured in quite thick cloud just now. It's I can confidently state that I've never actually been lost in the hills. I'd touch wood if there was any around to touch. But it's usually I think it's in conditions like this, where if I'm going to get lost or take the wrong ridge off a summit, it's this sort of weather that I'm likely to do it in, rather than thick cloud when I'm going to be completely on my guard and looking at my map all the time. So when it's like this, and you're expecting it to be very fine, you're not really paying attention. You're just sort of thinking that everything's going to be alright and the visibility is going to be good. And then all this murk comes in, and it might just come down for 10 minutes. But that's all it takes for you to be at the top of a ridge and then just sort of follow one set of footprints maybe, only to find when the cloud lifts that you've gone down the wrong ridge. It's easily done. But that's sort of heading over that way. I just wish this cloud would lift, because it's teasing with something quite stupendous. And I dare say the day will end that way, but for the moment it's teasing. I'm not going to complain though, because there's no wind. There's no wind, and it is bright, and I've only got one layer on. How often does that happen in the hills in March when there's snow on the ground? Well, I've had to take crampons off because it's getting a lot more rocky now. Ever since I come over this rise, it's more rocky, and crampons are going to be a hindrance rather than a help, because the teeth are going to snag on the rocks and slip. So until I get back over there, where the smooth snow starts once again, the compacted snow, it's just going to have to make do with boots. That's the first sister over there. That's Sgurr Keister Duya, I think. That's the second one, Sgurr Kana, and then the third one, the highest one, Sgurr is over there. This one, I forget the name of the Gaelic name for it, but it's Hill of the Spaniard. So named because Spanish troops were sent from Spain by the King of Spain in 1719 in what's known as the Little Rising, which is one of the Jacobite uprisings in the early 18th century. I suppose it was all the things that were leading up to the rebellion in 1745. James Stuart, who has declared himself as James VIII of Scotland and England and Ireland, whose father had been exiled for his Catholicism essentially, and William of Orange had come over and with Mary, and they'd ruled instead as Protestants. So the battle was fought down here, down in the Glen, in 1719, Battle of Glen Shiel. I think it was the only battle of that rising. It was a small uprising, And yeah, there's a lay-by down there, and a battle site is marked. You can see where it was. But the Hill of the Spaniard, because Catholic forces from Spain were sent over to help. Was it 5,000 were dispatched or something? But because of the weather, only a few hundred actually got here in the end, I believe. Anyway, I've been going quite a long time, and this is the first actual proper top summit I've got to. We still haven't climbed any of the sisters. The 5 to go. There's 1, 2, 3, and the 2 other ones are hidden behind Sgurr, and still a way to go. There's no footprints, which isn't surprising given the filthy weather the last couple of days. I wouldn't be expecting anyone to have been up here necessarily, and I don't entirely expect to see anyone today. What I find interesting, assuming that's the reason why the hill's called the Hill of the Spaniard, because of what happened in 1719. I find it interesting that that's not a very old name. It's not even 300 years old. And there's been people living in these parts for much longer than that. Makes me wonder whether maybe it had another name before, and its name's been replaced perhaps by one more evocative and descriptive. Who knows? I don't know. Don't know how often hill names change. Whether they change every couple of 100 years if some significant event happens on them or beneath them or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. Sort of in a bowl. And there's no, I can't even hear the road in Glen Shiel. There's no sound, just hear my heart thumping. Oh, that's the summit. Up there. Well, there we go. First sister done. I mean, it feels like I've done one already, coming over the Hill of the Spaniard over there. But no, this is the first one. That means there's 4 more to go. Sgurr, this one doesn't look so bad. Sgurr, a little bit more imposing. But then the 2 that are after it are actually smaller. So the next one's smaller than that one, and then the next one's smaller still. So you're losing height all the time after that. A nice cairn, big solid cairn to sit behind. Lovely. This big long hill over here, this big one, it's almost like a plateau, is Benvironment. And I was going to do that one today because it's not one I've done. I've done most of the hills around here. I haven't been up the saddle yet. But I've not done Benvironment, and it's supposed to be quite a impressive hill in terms of the corries it has, but it doesn't have the ridges like this ridge does. It doesn't have sort of shapely dips and rises that the cornices sort of come to a point along. And that's what I wanted today. I wanted a sort of a alpine sort of ridgy experience. So I didn't do Benvironment today, but that's one to do another time. But where Glen Shiel comes out down there, you go through a pass over there, and way out in the distance over there, you can probably just about make it out over here. In here, that's the head of Glen Shiel. So that's quite a popular long distance walk. People are walking from Morvich all the way up the Glen, which is 9 kilometres or something. Come over the pass and come to the top of Glen Shiel, where there's a youth hostel, of course, that you can only get to on foot. Right, very, very remote. And there's a bothy over there as well. So they're very, very popular with people wanting to walk through some of the wilder country in Scotland. It is remote, and it's still a very wild place, difficult to get to.